Committee members, I call the meeting to order. The clerk has advised that the witnesses have been sound tested, as well as those members appearing virtually, and we have a quorum. Welcome to meeting number 61 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is again taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order for June 23rd, 2022. Members attending in person and remotely using a Zoom application. To ensure an orderly meeting, before speaking, wait until I recognize you by name. For those participating virtually, please use the raised hand icon on your surface. Before speaking, make sure you turn on your mic. For those in the room, the microphones will be controlled by the verification officer. You have the option of speaking in the official language of your choice. If interpretation services become a problem, please get my attention. We'll suspend while they're being corrected. For those, translation is available with headsets here in the room, as well as using the translation icon on your surface. Again, unless there are exceptional circumstances, the use of headsets with a boom microphone, I will only recognize those participating virtually if their sound quality has been approved by the translator. For those members appearing virtually, if you're not approved to speak or to participate verbally, you can still participate in any votes in the committee by simply indicating with a thumbs up or thumbs down for yay or nay. Again, should any technical issues arise during the meeting, we will suspend while they're corrected. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Friday, February the 3rd, 2023, the committee will continue its study of Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and child care in Canada. I would like to inform all members that the witnesses appearing, as I indicate, have been checked and we are fine. I would like to welcome our witnesses today. As an individual, Susan Prentice, Duff Roblin, Professor of Government, University of Manitoba. From the Compass Early Learning and Care, Sheila Olan McLean, Chief Executive Officer. Regroupement des Centres d'Amitié Auto-Chanton du Québec. Emilia Laney, Director, Partnership and Programs by video conference. We will begin with Ms. Prentice for 5 minutes, and I will advise the witnesses that at your 5-minute time, I will advise you to conclude your remarks. So we'll begin with Ms. Prentice for 5 minutes, please. Ms. Prentice, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you. I submitted a brief by the March 17th deadline, and my comments today draw on it. My brief is more comprehensive than what I will have time to speak to today. I'm a university professor, a sociologist. I've published widely on historical and contemporary childcare policy. I actually earned my PhD for a study of childcare in Toronto during World War II and the campaign to save the wartime day nurseries. I appreciate that your job is to scrutinize the legislation and propose amendments as necessary, and I'd like to help. I have 2 main points. First, the most important step that I believe your committee can take is to introduce a definition of early learning and childcare early in the Act, right after the short title in the definitions section. I propose your definition should look something like this. Early learning and childcare is a system of regulated and licensed services provided by qualified early childhood educators who have specialized post-secondary education training. Yesterday in committee, a member read from a brief which suggests that childcare is the care of a child regardless of who provides the care. And I urge you to see the folly in this kind of definition for the purposes of legislation. Let me explain why. In my house, when my spouse and kids are sick, I get out the thermometer, I make them hot lemon with ginger, I provide over-the-counter pain medication. I am, of course, providing health care. but you would in no way reasonably want to do what I include under healthcare legislation or funding. In our Winnipeg home, we have smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, and we keep our fire extinguishers fully charged. We're practicing fire hygiene, but we in no way belong to public firefighting. Similarly, early learning and childcare does not mean and cannot mean care of a child wherever it occurs. It means instead a very particular kind of out-of-home early learning and childcare service, one that is regulated, licensed, and provided by qualified early childhood education professionals. Your bill needs this kind of definition. I have a second major recommendation on Article 7 on funding. The commitment to public and not-for-profit investments must be strengthened, and in my brief, I provide some textual direction. The current language directs funding in particular to public and not-for-profit providers, and it's much weaker than it should be. Keeping taxpayer dollars out of private pockets is strikingly important. It provides protection for the childcare ecosystem. It ensures maximally efficient use of public dollars. It acts as a bulwark against the negative effects on quality, staffing, and regulations exerted by a lobby for commercial childcare, particularly those parties with obligations to shareholders. It would be very valuable for your committee to review the experience of Australia beginning in the 1990s. In Australia, a series of decisions about small policy and funding changes set in motion a massive expansion of for-profit childcare, including a virtual monopoly. On November 6, 2008, Australia's largest single childcare chain went into receivership. The bankruptcy of this one national daycare chain left more than 1,000 childcare centers, over 120,000 children, and 16,000 childcare educators in the lurch. The Australian government had to step in to keep the lights on until a fire sale could happen. It's been called a spectacular public policy disaster. It was directly triggered by permitting public funds to go to for-profit childcare businesses. Knowing this history makes it crystal clear while Bill C-35 should prohibit public funding of commercial childcare operations. Those are my two main points. There are more in the brief. I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prentice. Now we'll go to Ms. Olan McLean for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Compass Early Learning and Care is a not-for-profit charitable organization in Central Ontario caring for over 3,300 children aged birth to 12 years. We're led by values of trusting relationships, safe, caring, joyful spaces, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, collective intelligence, and lifelong learning. We recently began a visionary strategic planning process, and we began by asking children, what kind of world do they want to live in? Here's what a couple of them said. Justin, age 7, said, I want to live in a world where everyone has a job and enough money for a safe place to live and enough food to eat with no worries, and people have to say kind things and not just what they're thinking when they think it. And here's Oliver, aged 3, said, I want to live in a world where there is a big city with lots of buildings and houses. My mummy would live there, and my daddy would live there too, and me, my whole family, like my grandma and my grandpa, Debbie too, and Debbie's her caregiver. I like flowers, so there would be flowers and there would be lots of bees. If they sting you, you would be able to fly because they put a special spell on you with their stinger. These are just two examples of the comments we gathered and that demonstrate children's connections to family, community, and their caregiver, their empathy and kindness, their connection to the natural world, and their understanding of justice and equity. Bill C-35 has many parallel values to COMPAS and to the children that we interviewed. It is a strong beginning, a foundation to embed accessible, affordable, quality early learning and childcare as a right for Canadians. To bring them to life, there must be solid structures that will nurture each of these concepts and inspire a groundswell of people to come together and work for the ends and the goals outlined. To create such a system, we will need three things: a stable and sustainable workforce, accessible, affordable childcare, and quality programming. For Bill C-35 to have the impact that it proposes, federal and provincial governments must understand the impact that this childcare staffing crisis has not only on childcare, but on every other sector in our society. Right now, COMPAS is working with a group from Central Ontario looking at how can we increase childcare for medical staff. There's a crisis. We're having hospitals call us to say, we need more childcare so that we can have our staff. So they're all so interconnected, and it starts with childcare. People can't work without childcare. A stable and sustainable workforce means that we would need to increase our professional compensation, starting at $30 an hour, having a pension plan and benefits. Previous federal government initiatives for workforce strategy funding was rolled out in Ontario with the provision that not one penny could go to compensation of any kind. It was very explicit. Much of this money went to colleges for free tuition for an ECE diploma. Colleges are now reporting that these graduates are not going to childcare, that in fact, they are going to higher education, they're going to school boards, they're going to Costco and even to Tim Hortons because the wages are higher and the responsibility is less. CWELC has made a great contribution towards affordable childcare. Our families report that they can financially breathe again. Very good thing. Accessibility will be an issue, and it's not an easy issue to address right away. It will take all of us working together to expand our system to accommodate the many families currently on our wait list and those that are going to join shortly. And every expansion dollar will be needed for quality programs, beautiful spaces, and for sustainable funding. We must send a message to for-profit corporations, shareholders, and entrepreneurs that Canada is not open for childcare business and that in Canada, children are not for profit. Working together as a childcare community along with the federal, provincial, municipal governments and community partners, we can look back in 20 years and we can see that our vision is coming to reality. To do this, the not-for-profit and public sectors will need access to infrastructure loans, support from groups such as Building Blocks for Childcare, and support for our home childcare expansion.
So,
also,
McLean,
high quality.
if you could conclude,
okay.
Conclude.
Very good.
If you can.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay. So high quality programs built on documents such as Ontario's How Does Learning Happen, the BC and New Brunswick early learning frameworks, and also research to study programs that are already very embedded in quality. We have excellent programs across Canada. Let's build our system on those programs, and let us not build the system on underfunded programs and the scarcity model where we want to save all existing childcare, whether or not it's good for children.
Thank you.
Our language, okay.
Thank you, Ms. Ola McLean.
Okay, thank you.
You can, in the question period, you'll be able to address what you missed. Madame Lainé, pour 5 minutes.
5 minutes, Mrs. Lainé. Hello, hello. I'm Emily Lainé, Director, Partnerships and Programs. I'm member of the Wendake First Nation. I represent the Regroupement des Centres d'Amitié Autochtones du Québec. I'm very proud to work on the territory of my ancestors, and thank you for inviting me and allowing me to express the needs and the challenges of Indigenous families. The regroupement is an umbrella group that supports 10 friendship centers and 3 service points across Quebec, located in the main cities that Indigenous people live in or visit in significant numbers. The regroupement helps develop tangible solutions and public policies to improve the well-being of the increasing number of Indigenous people living in urban settings. It also implements innovative and proactive strategies to address needs and support the development and implementation of projects and programs. We also represent a large infrastructure of services for Indigenous people, and this infrastructure includes 70 years of existence throughout the country. These provide first-line services for Indigenous people, all types of services, whether it be health, education, employability, but also services for family and early childhood. These are places that are important for identity, traditional learning. The impacts of the role of these friendship centers are numerous and documented. We include improved well-being and holistic health of family members, safety nets for families, family empowerment, creation of diverse experiences and opportunities that contribute to children's holistic development and healthy habits, and stimulation of the desire for lifelong learning. Early childhood and family services delivered by the Centre d'Amitié or the Friendship Centers, depending on the available resources, the local population, the realities, and their unique issues. We're talking about early childhood learning services, family services across the province. I already said we have frontline services. When we're talking about this, we're talking about health clinics, allowing to address many challenges that Indigenous families have in urban settings. We know that these families have many vulnerabilities. We have day camp workshops, family outings in the region, activities linked to perinatal workshops and activities for future parents, many cultural activities, spaces for children to have access to educational materials and essential resources for pregnant women and new parents, parental respite services, emergency food assistance. Bill C-35 includes funding agreements with Indigenous partners to enable Indigenous governance and partnerships in this area. Those agreements are necessary because, despite the multitude of early childhood and family services available, many needs are still unmet. We know Indigenous families in urban settings do not obtain public services. We know that there is racism, prejudice, that people don't trust government institutions. Community organizations such as the Friendship Centers are important and become places where they can obtain culturally relevant services. It's important to have access to specialized services to support these families. Many are also in the youth protection system. To fulfill the federal government's vision and goal for early learning and child care, Bill C-35 must take into account the diverse realities and unique needs and priorities of Indigenous children. Co-development, partnership, and collaboration are the best ways forward. Unfortunately, place of residence too often affects access to quality child education services. The result is a discrimination on two fronts, direct and indirect, with more than 50% of Indigenous people living in cities, and that proportion continuing to grow. This trend has a huge impact on the need for quality and quantity of services. Organizations continue to face jurisdictional disputes when they seek funding. Stable, substantial, and equitable funding is needed. Right now, urban Indigenous organizations need equitable funding and support to continue to consolidate their services, because this funding goes through Indigenous organizations. We have to have fair funding models reflecting the rights and jurisdiction of Indigenous peoples. Urban Indigenous organizations need equitable funding and support so we can provide services. Thank you, Mrs. Lene. Thank you.
We will now go to the first round of questioning with Madame Ferrari. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to our witnesses. Good morning, and thank you for being here as we try to navigate this system and do all we can to ensure access to affordable, quality childcare for all families across Canada. Sheila, if I can call you Sheila, nice to have you here from Peterborough. Nice to see the representation from Compass. It's a wonderful facility in my riding, and I've had the opportunity to visit them. They do incredible work and represent many families and have some phenomenal resources. Sheila, if I can you tell me right now how many families are on a wait list to access care for Compass?
Yeah, we have about 300 in each of our programs.
Can you table, so what, 300 for each, how many programs do you have? Like the total number on the wait list?
Okay, so we have 40 different licensed centers, and there's about 300. Some of those may overlap because some centers are close to each other, but a lot.
So if I could get you to table to the committee, Sheila, that'd be really beneficial to see those numbers of the wait list. That would be great. I'm curious if you could tell me how you feel that Bill C-35, this legislation, has improved waitlist times and access to quality childcare.
I see this as a process that we're at the beginning. And the first part is to make it affordable for families. And it's certainly doing that. The unfortunate circumstances of that is that it does increase wait lists greatly. So we also need at the same time a strategy to increase that access for expansion. And those are the two areas that really I would like this committee to focus on are how do we increase spaces in a sustainable and quality kind of way. And the second thing is to compensation plan for our workforce. We absolutely, we need support with that. And I think that the federal and provincial government together governments together can come up with a plan that will support. I do absolutely support the.
I'm sorry, Sheila. I have such limited time. I'm
okay.
Sorry. I know it feels like I'm cutting you off.
That's okay.
So just for confirming, as it stands right now, the bill definitely needs to be amended because it's not the way that it currently stands. It's not improving access right now. We need to strengthen this bill.
Well, I see that the bill is a good beginning. It is the amendments would certainly help, but I don't think that we need to go for perfect in order before we can move forward. This bill will enshrine childcare as a right for Canadians. That is such an important step for us to get beyond, and then we can start to work on how do we do that? How do we?
Yeah, for sure. And I know you and I have had these great conversations, and I think it's just, I think it's just really critical that we still can't forget about those people on those wait lists. So how do we, it's great for the people who are in there. This is like winning the lottery. So we've got to really look at how do we solve this. If I could move to Ms. Lene, I just had a quick question before I ask you another question. Do you represent unlicensed childcares as well, ma'am? Madame Lene, I believe.
It's Ms. Ferrari. I believe it's because she's having technical problems. That's why she disappeared. Do you want to direct the question to another panelist?
Okay. Well, I'd like, can I have my time back to ask her that question, or how does that work, Chair?
If you continue using your time with other panelists, it's your time.
Okay, I'd like to, do we know if she's going to get back on? I do have a very specific question for her.
Okay. I cannot answer that for you at this time. The technical people have not been able to reach her. But if we can, before this panel is out, I will let you get back for one question to her.
Can I give up my time at the second to get back and
Sure.
then come back to her to see if we get that?
Yeah, if you have one question to address to the witness that we lost, I will ensure that you have that opportunity before we conclude this panel.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, so then we will move to Madame Sachs for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses today. And Mr. Chair, if I might add, I also have some very specific questions for Madame Lenné. So if she does come back, I would like to have one question, and I'm happy to cede some time in order to do that. But if that being the case, I'd like to move to Ms. Prentice, who's here today, because your opening remarks really lean into what we're trying to do with creating a nationwide, accessible, affordable, high-quality childcare system. So can you just lean in a little bit more about why it's important for us to be investing in nonprofit care with taxpayer dollars?
I can. So I started by saying that I think it's really urgent that the bill contains a strong definition of the services under consideration. It's going to be very important to delineate what's being discussed. What's being discussed are early learning and childcare services, which are best thought of as a public good. And public goods often are market failures in the language of economics. In a labor-intensive service like childcare, where somewhere between 80 and 85% of a budget is spent on the people who care for children, a profit motive invariably has quality diminishing effects. It has quality diminishing effects because the single most elastic budget category is staffing. And the way you make a profit in childcare is to change ratios, hire less trained staff, see more turnover, and basically shortchange children and families. A profit motive is fundamentally incompatible with caring for vulnerable people. We saw this, if I can draw a parallel from a sister field, in Quebec, where for-profit homes for older people were much more dangerous places during the pandemic. Nominally, long-term care was provided by the same standard to all people. And we saw clear patterns where for-profit childcare is a more dangerous place. Vulnerable people are made at greater risk in for-profit settings. And where there is a profit motive, quality invariably will suffer. And this is why it's prudent public policy to reserve taxpayer dollars to not-for-profit services, where 100% of the money goes to children and families, and none of it goes into private pockets.
And thank you for that. In May 2021, you wrote an op-ed that was entitled, "We Must Eliminate Profit-Making from Childcare and Elder Care." And I know you referenced that in terms of the Quebec model on LTCs. But, I mean, we all witnessed what was happening during the pandemic, but could you expand on some of the reasoning on the conclusion, whether it's specifically on what you've seen in terms of quality of child care in the for-profit sector versus the nonprofit? And you also lead into staff turnover rates, which, you know, also potentially can impact quality. So if you could just sort of lean into the evidence behind your conclusions, that would be really helpful for the committee.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd be very pleased to table a bibliography of international research experience, which could show you some of the evidence-based reasons why for-profit childcare in Canada, in the United States, and elsewhere is of demonstrably lower quality. It's true in both system-wide, what we would call structural quality, as well as in process quality on the floor. It's a vast literature. If you'll let me draw on my expertise, I'll simply say that there is a mountain of research that proves that for-profit childcare is, in general, of lower quality.
I would be pleased to have that bibliography submitted to the committee to help as we weigh in on this. Chair, how much time do I have if I have to leave a little bit for Madame Lenné?
A minute and a half.
Then I will cede my time so that I can speak to Madame Lenné with the hopes that I can.
Okay, just for the committee, her internet failed, and she's attempting to reboot and reconnect, so hopefully we'll get back. Thank you, Madame Sachs. Madame Beyroube? Oui?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Pour 6 minutes.
6 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. My question will be for the witnesses. Thank you for appearing before the committee, and thank you to the interpreters. It's really important that they receive interpretation. Are there missing elements that we should add, in your opinion, in Bill C-35?
Who did you direct the question to?
À tous les témoins.
To all the witnesses.
Ms.
Well,
Prentice?
if it's an open question to
Yes.
us all, yes, I will say at least two things are missing from the legislation before us. One is a careful definition that makes it clear that we are not speaking about all care of all children wherever it occurs. We're speaking about early learning and childcare. It's a very particular kind of service. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the protections for not-for-profit and public must be strengthened. And the third, which I get into in my brief, is I would like to see more public transparency and accounting for the National Advisory Council. But for today's purposes, that's in my brief, and it's secondary to my testimony today.
Madame McLean.
And I would, if I may just add, a workforce strategy would be important, along with something about the expansion, but certainly supporting the comments that Susan has made.
Merci.
Thank you. In your opinion, who should sit on the advisory council on daycare? Mrs. Prentice.
The committee itself is off to a good start with a representative committee. I'd make a plug for more researchers, but that's inevitable. What seems especially important for me for the committee is that it is supplied with the resources and data to permit it to take a thorough and robust evaluation of progress towards the objectives of the framework and the Act, to be able to report it to the minister and to be able to report publicly to Canadians. I have some concerns that the legislation as proposed is not robust enough to fully empower the National Advisory Committee to be able to undertake this work. At this point, I think it's the secondary problem. I'm going to make the observation that what's before us today is the legislation. It's a very narrow focus. It's quite different from the kind of implementation that will roll out across the country with provinces and territories and Indigenous governments. And as much as I've wanted to speak to implementation, I'm trying to speak directly today to Bill C-35 specifically.
Merci.
Thank you. Mrs. McLean.
Yeah, I think that Susan has done a great job of summarizing, and I don't want to muddy the waters. I think that focusing on as she has put out is fine.
You know, there are important factors such as inflation and the increase in daycare fees. In your opinion, should we take this into account to determine long-term funding levels for daycares?
Madame
Mrs. Prentice. Yeah. 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 Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It appears that the technical issue has been corrected. We'll return to Madame Beyroube pour 2 minutes, Madame.
For 2 minutes. So I didn't lose too much time. Mr. Chair? Great, thank you. given that Mrs. Lene is back, I would like to thank her for testifying today. My question is the following. Perhaps you did not have the time to speak in your presentation about the challenges and recommendations. So what are the challenges that you're facing and what are your recommendations? Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Berube. I'm sorry about my technical problems with my internet issues. So with regards to recommendations about the needs, I briefly spoke to this, but it's to make sure that under this bill, the framework for early childhood education for Indigenous children will be accessible. Right now, this funding is only managed going through Indigenous administrations and does not allow the friendship centers in Canada to have access to funding to develop early childhood programs. And we know that Indigenous families don't go through government services. They're for reasons linked to structural racism, discrimination. So they go to friendship centers to have safe and appropriate programs for families and early childhood. Microphone, please. It is good for young children. So in Mrs. Berube, thank you. Thank you.
Excusez, Monsieur le Président.
Ms. Gazan, for 6 minutes, please. Ms. Gazan, you're on mute. You cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. Ms. Gazan, can you hear me? Okay, you appear to be on mute, so try. Oh, wow. We still cannot hear you. Ms. Gazan, I'm going to go back to two of the earlier members while we're working to correct your issue. You will get your 6 minutes. Okay? So I'm going to return to Madame Ferrari and then to Ms. Sachs for 2 minutes each before we return to Ms. Gazan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be as quick as I can. Sheila, if I can you just clarify those numbers you said earlier? Because I asked waitlists. You said there were 300 per program, but there's 40 programs. That's 12,000. That seems outrageous when you only have 3,300 spaces. Am I doing the math wrong there?
Well, we think of a program that may have possibly 100 or less than 100 spaces, and it has 300 to 400. Some have 600 people on the wait list. Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate.
1,000. So four times
it's not
the amount.
It's not the experience of every program. It is an experience because we do pay a lot of attention to quality, to family engagement, and the reputation gets out there.
And so I know how great a work you do. I think it's really important that Canadians hear that this is the reality, that there are far more parents waiting, far more families waiting for access than have access. That number is out of control. So we have to fix that. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Sheila. I just have to move on. Ms. Lene, if you want to table this to the committee, if you don't have the time to answer this question, two things. Number one, if you can quickly answer yes or no, do you represent unlicensed childcare providers?
You're on mute there.
No.
No. Okay. Just clarifying. And if I could just get you to table to the committee, because I don't know if you'll have enough time to answer this. It is understood that since the proportion of Aboriginal people living in cities is over 50% and growing, the government has a responsibility to this population. What do you think would be the best way to implement Aboriginal early learning and childcare programs and partnerships so that they can also support urban children and help them stay culturally connected?
Ferrari, Madame Lainé, you will have to provide that in writing to the committee, or you may be able to address it in another question. Ms. Sachs, for 2 minutes.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure you
Okay.
could hear me. Thank you.
I can now. We'll return to you, Ms. Gazan, after Ms. Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and merci à Madame Lainé pour votre
Thank you, Mrs. Lene, for your participation today.
in English. What does not-for-profit care mean for Indigenous children in urban settings?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the questions. As I was telling Mrs. Ferrari, I don't represent the unlicensed daycares. I'm really speaking on behalf of community Indigenous organizations that are the friendship centers, and they provide early childhood education services. So we're going over and above daycare. We're providing family support services, because we know that the majority of Indigenous families don't go into services that might be provided by the government or private daycare. This is the reality in Quebec. I would imagine it would be the same throughout Canada. Oftentimes it's very difficult for these families to access services because of racism, discrimination, prejudice. So community organizations such as friendship centers that can provide respite services to parents or daycare services become solutions, essentially, to make sure that the urban Indigenous population can receive quality daycare, but they're outside of the regular system.
Last follow-up question. Do the current agreements as they're written with the inclusion of recognition of Indigenous children enhance the ability of friendship centers to do their work? Yes or no?
Non,
No.
puisque ce sont les organisations.
No, because they're indigenous political organizations that are managing, and so these organizations have no access.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sachs. We'll now go to Ms. Gazan for 6 minutes. Ms. Gazan, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. My first question is for Madame Lene. With the passing of Bill C-15 in the last Parliament, the application of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples was affirmed in Canadian law. And that includes Article 3 relating to the right to self-determination. And we know that central to the right to self-determination is the respect of free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples. Would you support the amendment of Bill C-35 to ensure the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples on matters pertaining to Indigenous peoples? Yes or no?
J'aimerais ça répondre oui ou non.
I would like to say yes or no, but I'm not sure I understand the question. And not because I don't speak English, but I'm not able to answer this question. I'm very sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm talking about the right of parents' self-determination to have to have free, prior, and informed consent on any matters relating to their children. So to get permission, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Alors oui.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Madame Prentons. It's nice to have a fellow Manitoban in the room. We're talking about developing a national childcare strategy, and I know it's not going to work unless we invest in a workforce. And I'm wondering, and we also know that we are witnessing a workforce crisis in the childcare sector that is negatively impacting workers, children, and parents. How big of a factor are inadequate wages and benefits in contributing to this crisis? And do we need a workplace or workforce strategy to address it?
Well, the quality of the working conditions of the adults who care for children is a direct measure of the quality of care for children. So the two are intimately linked. It seems important to me, however, to distinguish between what a bill and legislation can do to set a national framework, and then how it becomes implemented by governments and how it is put in place on the ground. And while there is a relationship, they're not a straight line. One of the things I would like to see, for example, would be the National Advisory Council assured of the kind of information and data it needs so it can track, for example, progress on strengthening the workforce. But I do not think that the legislation itself will contain the workforce strategy. What will be important once the legislation is passed is to ensure that the funding will be adequate and that the action plans that are signed with each province and territory and Indigenous government are high quality and will produce childcare services in a good way for everybody.
Madame Olen McLean, you know, I spoke about a workforce strategy. Do you agree that Bill C-35 needs to more directly acknowledge the workforce crisis? And would you support including an explicit commitment to support decent working conditions, livable wages, and benefits as one of the principles guiding the federal investments in the system?
I certainly would. Yeah, and I agree with Susan that it doesn't have to be explicit about how we're going to do it, but be very clear that the importance of the workforce and that the working conditions and compensation are very are paramount, really.
And just moving on, in 2021, the federal government, and I'll also ask you this as well, Madame Prentice. In 2021, the federal government promised personal support workers across Canada a wage floor of at least $25 an hour. Is it time for them to make the same commitment to childcare workers and provide additional resources to provinces in order to improve wage grids from coast to coast? I'll start with you, Madame Olen McLean, and then move to Madame Prentice. And then I'll move over to Madame Linné to expand on inequalities with Indigenous care of children.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, again, absolutely that in Ontario, we were given an $18 an hour floor, and the what that did to our workforce was awful. It was they felt defeated. They felt like, you know, this is supposed to be, or this is really important work, and we're not being compensated. I think that a strategy such as you've suggested, a floor, I would like to see a floor of $30 an hour, but $25 an hour would certainly be a big improvement on that. And yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Madame Prentice, quickly. Thank you.
The bill should contain the kind of principles and aspirations that lead to evidence-based best practices. This is inevitably going to mean supporting a well-qualified, well-trained workforce, but the bill itself, I do not believe, needs to contain salary floors. Those ought to be a part of what's written into the provincial, territorial, and Indigenous agreements, and this is where the national...
So just going back to that, I agree we don't want to put salary...
Your time is over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gazan. We'll now go to Madame Falk for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. My first question I want to address to Madame Linné. So would you say then friendship centers are already providing childcare?
Encore une fois, moi,
Once again, the daycare services that I'm familiar with are the ones offered through Early Childhood Education Center in Quebec. They are quality daycare services managed by the Quebec government. The friendship centers offer services, but they are not daycares. We have respite services for parents. We have culturally relevant programs to make sure that we can respond to the needs. So they're not structured in the way that we know with the centers, but they are essential for Indigenous families.
For sure, absolutely. I have a number of friendship centers throughout my riding. I have a rural riding. And absolutely, I can absolutely see how community culture is reinforced and also even a safe place to go. So that's where I would be interested in knowing, even across Canada, are there centers, friendship centers that maybe do have licensed type of daycares within the center for that purpose, especially when we're seeing a lot of Indigenous peoples coming into urban centers, right, which is away from their home reserve or where they're from to a place of community. So would you know if that would be across Canada like that? Like there may be centers like that?
Oui.
Yes. Mrs. Berube mentioned for Quebec, in Val-d'Or, they have an early childhood education center that is linked to them. And so there are two different places. There's Sept-Îles and Trois-Rivières. So we will have childhood services in these places where families will have access to services. And yes, in some friendship centers elsewhere in Canada, I know that daycare services are sometimes provided, sometimes going through a different program, Aboriginal Head Start programs. So through this program, we can provide daycare services, but these are underfunded, and that's why we need to have extra funding.
Okay, that leads into my next question for you, through you, Chair. Just what do the wait lists look like with some of these organizations or centers for childcare?
I don't have the numbers with me, but I do know that my colleagues in other Canadian provinces have mentioned this, that there are extensive waiting lists, and oftentimes these are children with special needs. Some leave their communities to have access to urban services because their children have special needs. The same is true in Quebec. There are wait lists to participate, especially in the programs that offer support to families, but I don't have the numbers.
Would you be willing to table those numbers, like go back and bring them to our committee and table them for us?
Ben oui, je vais me renseigner.
Yes, I will provide them.
Wonderful, thank you. And I guess that kind of leads into my next question as well. So do you believe that these, because I think we can all say there's a great need for childcare across the country. It doesn't matter what province or territory you live in. There is a need for childcare. So would you say that, just referring, I guess, to these centers, would you say or believe that they would be equipped to create more spaces? And if they're not equipped, what is needed so that they could achieve that to, help service and support our Indigenous Canadians?
Je l'ai dit dans ma présentation.
I said this in my presentation. The friendship centers have over 50 years in existence, so there's a need for infrastructure. Oftentimes the infrastructure is aging. In Quebec, we had government support through the province, through an infrastructure program, and friendship centers were able to upgrade and improve access to services. But before being able to provide more services to families, we do have infrastructure needs to improve the spaces.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Falk. Now to Mr. Coteau for the last 5-minute round in the first hour. Mr. Coteau, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank the witnesses for being here and their commitment to early learning and childcare here in this country. I know in my neighborhood, the riding I represent, Don Valley East, this initiative is a really important initiative. It provides families with the ability to support their children through early learning. Also, it frees parents to participate more in the economy. So I just want to thank everyone on our panel today for the work they're doing. One of the issues that was brought up early, actually was brought up, I believe, by all of our witnesses, was around the monetization of the sector. Mrs. McLean, you actually you suggested that there's a movement to monetize this sector. And I believe you actually spoke about, and I could be wrong, but it was an international investors and international push into the sector to monetize it. And I just was wondering if you could just elaborate on that a bit more.
That was actually Ms. Prentice that had spoken to that, so I'll give the floor to her.
Ms. Prentice?
Yes, internationally, a number of private equity firms are moving into childcare. A number of them are traded on the stock exchange. They are clearly interested in Canada, and unless the national legislative and funding framework is strong enough, we will be a target for the kinds of acquisitions that have happened in other countries. That bankrupt Australian company I mentioned at one point owned childcare programs in 13 different countries. There is clearly an interest in a number of operators in making profits out of childcare, not particularly in providing early learning and childcare services. And it will be very important for the legislation to put parameters so that we create childcare as a public good rather than as a profit opportunity for businesses.
And so I agree with you 100% when we talk about the public good and really looking for ways to stop the profit motive in childcare as a whole. Can you give us some examples of? You spoke about, I think it was an Australian or Austria, I believe you said example. Can you talk a little bit about that failure?
So in Australia, which is a federation much like Canada, under government changes in the early 90s, childcare funding switched, and the kind of policy scape that had promoted a primarily not-for-profit and community-based childcare model across the country was overturned. It created a fresh environment in which entrepreneurs could get public dollars and reap private profits. Naturally, they seized this business opportunity. There was a virtual monopoly at one point when ABC Learning one company provided over 40% of the spaces in Australia, and it went bankrupt. There's much more to say about this. What I want to observe is that the legislation before you has an opportunity to strengthen nonprofit and public delivery in childcare. And if we would like to avoid the spectacular policy disasters that have happened in other countries, we should strengthen the protections that the legislation proposes, while also ensuring it gives a clear definition of what is early learning and childcare services, so that nobody mistakes it as being childcare of a child wherever the child is, but that we're speaking about licensed, regulated quality services provided by childcare professionals.
So I just want to follow up on that point. I think that people would make the argument that if you have more players in the system, you can build more capacity, and therefore, private care or private companies participating in this space would actually expand capacity, which we keep hearing from the Conservatives on this issue. My question to you is, how do you, since you do want to focus specifically on the legislative piece, how do we establish within the legislation the parameters that allows for growth to happen within that favors the public system over a private system?
So the current legislation will permit the continued operation, of course, of existing for-profit childcare programs. The legislation in Article 7 specifically speaks to new funding. It's in the individual agreements with provinces, territories, and Indigenous governments that the action plans for expansion are laid out. It's in those plans directly that the implementation will occur. What the national legislation will do is provide the public protections. Here's what I think. If you're giving $100 to a childcare program so it can offer quality services, you do not want 1 penny of those dollars going into a private owner's pocket. You want 100 of those $100 going into the service directly. And anytime we take out the protections that will restrict funding only to profit and not for profit, you're effectively burning public dollars and letting them go to private owners and taking them away from the children and families and staff in the childcare programs.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Prentice. That concludes the first round. I want to thank the witnesses for appearing and answering the questions. So thank you. We'll suspend for a moment while we're inviting the next panel in. Again, panelists, witness, thank you for taking your time to appear before this committee this morning. Merci beaucoup. Room time is getting tight, so I'd ask everybody to take their places. Welcome back to committee. We'll resume the study of Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada. To assist the interpreters in their work, I remind all members to speak slowly so they can interpret properly. You may choose to speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available in the room with the headset, as well as those appearing virtually by using the translation icon at the bottom of your surface. If you have the option of speaking the official language of your choice. If interpretation services or a technical issue arise, please get my attention. We will suspend while it is being corrected. I also remind all members appearing virtually, screenshots are not allowed. I would like to welcome our witnesses to begin our second round, and they will speak for 5 minutes, and I will advise those witnesses. I will advise you at 5 minutes and ask you to conclude your comments because our time is running tight. We have Lila Sarangi from the National Director, Campaign 2000. Emily Golick, Early Childhood Educators of British Columbia. And we have Christopher Smith, Associate Executive Director of the Mutart Foundation. We will begin with Ms. Sarangi for 5 minutes. Ms. Sarangi, you have the floor.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to appear today. Campaign 2000 is a diverse, nonpartisan coalition of over 120 organizations working to end child and family poverty. Together, we represent every province and territory across the country. We came about in response to the 1989 unanimous all-party federal resolution to end child poverty by the year 2000. For more than 30 years, we've been tracking progress towards that goal through our annual reporting and putting forward achievable policy solutions. Campaign 2000 has long advocated for a system of high-quality, universally accessible childcare as a key component to a broader plan to end child and family poverty. We celebrated the historic Budget 2021 announcement to develop a Canada-wide early learning and childcare plan, and we were similarly pleased when this bill was introduced in Parliament. It provides a good framework for the establishment and longevity of the national childcare system. We are particularly pleased that it strives to develop a childcare system that contributes to the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals and advancing Canada's international human rights obligations, including those under the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Poverty is a violation of our human rights. Child poverty in Canada remains persistent throughout the country. In our most recent report card, we found that in 2020, nearly 1 million children lived in poverty. That's 13.5% of all children, or nearly 1 in 8. These rates increased dramatically for children from systemically marginalized groups. For example, First Nation children living on reserve have a child poverty rate of 37.4%. Children in lone mother-led families is at 30%, 19% for immigrant children, 8.6% for Black children, to name a few. Childhood poverty is a traumatic experience that has lifelong impacts. Research shows inextricable links between poverty and children's ill health and with negative developmental outcomes. But research has also shown that high-quality early learning and childcare can act as protective factors from the harmful effects of poverty and also as equalizers, improving long-term development and employment outcomes for those kids. To access to childcare that is affordable and flexible can reduce pressures on family incomes, enabling them to participate in work, education, or training, and to reduce a family's poverty risk. The concluding observations from the most recent review of Canada's implementation on the Convention of the Rights of the Child, released just last year, found that the committee is deeply concerned about the discrimination and marginalization of children, and that Canada is very far away from meeting the needs of Indigenous, racialized, migrant children, and children with disabilities, among others. One of their main focus areas of the concluding observations was to ensure that low-income families have access to programs and services without discrimination. We want to ensure that this system is built, as the system is built out, it is done so in a way that is accessible to these families. This would include, as we've proposed in our report cards, a $0 to $10 a day sliding scale child care model, where $10 is the maximum a family would pay. We propose this because a $10 a day program is out of reach for the families who are working low-waged, precarious work or trapped in our woefully inadequate social and disability programs. The average income, for example, for a low-income single mother with 2 children is $26,703. $10 a day would work out to roughly 1/5 of her income. In our submission to you, we offer 4 recommendations to strengthen the bill. I won't go through them in detail because you'll have them. What I will say, though, is that we have thought very carefully about the language we've proposed to strengthen and enhance the guiding principles. Access to the new early learning and childcare system without discrimination must be made explicit for children from these groups, including children with disabilities and without permanent immigration status and all low-income children. We've also made recommendations to strengthen accountability by introducing requirements to the advisory committee to also report publicly to both houses of Parliament and to any committee that they see fit, and that reports from the advisory committee and the minister be based on broad consultation, appropriate disaggregated data, and summarize how the new system is concretely advancing human rights obligations. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sarangi. Now to Ms. Golick for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and committee members. I'm honored to be calling in for the land that I live, work, and grow on as the unsurrendered traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Through our obligations, ECBC is compelled to think deeply, listen with intention, and act ethically with commitments through the following lenses: the BC Early Learning Framework, Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, the ECBC Code of Ethics, Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Framework, Truth and Reconciliation Commission's Calls to Action, and the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child. Since 2011, ECBC and our partner, the Coalition of Childcare Advocates of BC, have been championing our own provincial 10-a-day childcare plan. This plan advocates for a public childcare system that addresses affordability, accessibility, and quality. And we are heartened to see the success the 10-a-day plan, childcare plan growing throughout Canada. The essential factor for a quality system that supports children, families, and communities is the early childhood educator profession. ECE in Canada is commonly perceived as a service for working parents rather than a public good of great social, cultural, and political importance. When early childhood education is understood and operated as a commodity to be purchased by consumers in a competitive market,
Ms. Golick, you muted yourself.
Sorry.
Okay, continue.
Okay. When early childhood education is understood and operated as a commodity to be purchased by consumers in a competitive market, early childhood education is reduced to an economic transaction without consideration of educational values and purpose. From this perspective, early childhood educators are viewed as technicians only within a model of cost efficiency and minimum universal standards. ECBC supports the development of the National Advisory Council and the importance of the council to be accountable, working with academics and educators to ensure we are co-creating a system that is not limited to a service but provides an educational space that all Canadian children deserve. Current research asserts social policies and narratives that maintain our profession as gendered, racialized, marginalized, and positions as a secondary market force. However, we know that early childhood educators are much more than these narratives. Educators practice with ethical commitments as they co-construct lively curriculum with children. For generations, the education of early childhood educators has evolved to reflect the diversities of children and families. Educators who are predominantly female have for too long shouldered inadequate working conditions, low wages, lack of benefits, and minimum professional recognition. During the global pandemic, it was highlighted how fragile the current funding and processes are, and how imperative it is to move forward to create a new Canada-wide social system that embeds a wage grid, higher post-secondary standards, and healthy working conditions. With federal leadership, a system can be developed that includes a fair wage grid reflective of education experience and benefits for the workforce. Bill C-35 needs to ensure the complexities and the pedagogy of this work is recognized and holds provinces accountable for creating a system based on child's rights. ECBC has encouraged that this enactment honors Indigenous rights and jurisdictions. We must demand this acknowledgement and identify and overcome barriers created by colonial systems and structures and align our practices accordingly. We support and acknowledge that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit have autonomy. We commit to learn, listen, and act in our ongoing work to decolonialize our own practices, perspectives, and professional education. ECBC encourages everyone to make this commitment alongside us. In my 30 plus years as an early childhood educator, I'm elated to see the investments and commitments from the federal government in the early years. Research has shown the importance of strong ongoing investment in a public, not-for-profit license-based model. Bill C-35, an act representing early learning and childcare, takes a progressive leap forward in recognizing this through the lens of a child's right. ECBC is committed to working in partnership to ensure this bill fosters a system that attracts and retains highly qualified early childhood educators and represents the diversity of Canada. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Golick. And now Mr. Smith for 5 minutes, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today before the committee in respect to Bill C-35. My name is Christopher Smith, and I serve as the Associate Executive Director of the Matart Foundation. I'm joining you today from Treaty 6, which is the traditional ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as the traditional home of Métis peoples. The Matart Foundation is a private charitable foundation based in Edmonton, Alberta, whose funding interests in charitable activities include early learning and childcare. Over the past 2 decades, the foundation has conducted research and convened and supported stakeholder consultations on the organization, financing, and delivery of early learning and childcare. We have undertaken this work in collaboration with governments, public institutions, and civil society partners. Consistent with our charitable purpose, the foundation undertakes its work in support of the public benefit and in a non-partisan way. The foundation's most recent early learning and childcare work has 2 main areas of focus. First, the foundation continues to work with a range of partners to advance the educational preparation, working conditions, and compensation of early childhood educators. Despite a large body of research which highlights the foundational role professional, well-qualified educators play in the delivery of high-quality childcare, early childhood educators across Canada remain underprepared, poorly supported, and underpaid for their important work. The primary reliance on a market-based approaches for the funding and delivery of childcare has profoundly undervalued the work of early childhood educators. It has further resulted in governments historically struggling to recruit and retain the qualified educators they need to deliver high-quality childcare. The second focus of the Foundation's work is on the roles local governments can play in the planning, management, and delivery of early learning and childcare. In those countries with well-developed, mature early learning and childcare systems, local governments play central roles in ensuring that services are responsive to community needs. They commonly support and deliver childcare and play active roles in making sure that services are developed where they are needed most and delivered in ways that advance public interests. At present, in much of Canada outside of Ontario, local governments play more limited or discretionary roles in support of childcare. The potential exists for this to change with appropriate support from the senior levels of government. In respect to Bill C-35, the Foundation commends the federal, provincial, and territorial governments on their historic agreements to work collaboratively to transform Canada's early learning and childcare sectors into systems that are more publicly funded, managed, and planned. The commitment of the federal, provincial, and territorial governments to work together on advancing early learning and childcare has been a long time coming, as has the commitment of the necessary public funding to ensure that every child has access to high-quality childcare. The Foundation also offers its support for the federal government's agreement with Indigenous governments to advance early learning and childcare for Indigenous children and their families in ways that are distinctions-based and self-determined. This agreement is consistent with Canada's commitments under the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and provides a basis for responding to the calls for action set out by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. The Foundation views Bill C-35 as an important step in the longer and larger process of building the high-quality, affordable, inclusive early learning and childcare systems that Canadian children and their families want and need. The bill affirms and reflects the collaborative nature of early learning and childcare system building within Confederation and establishes the federal government's long-term commitment to the transformational change necessary to elevate early learning and childcare as a public good. The proposed commitment under Section 16 of the legislation to annual reporting on progress in system building is central both to maintaining public trust and ensuring the most effective use of public funds. This reporting should therefore be to Parliament, and should provide parliamentarians, and by extension Canadians, with the opportunity to review and assess the work undertaken in supportive system building. Thank you for the opportunity to present today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Before we begin, I want to advise we'll have one round, 5 minutes to each party, because I do need to go in camera for committee business at roughly 10:30. So each party will get 5-minute questioning round. We will begin with Madame Ferrari, or who's Ms. Gray? Oh, Ms. Gray for 5 minutes, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. First question I have is for Ms. Galwick. We have heard from the government that they estimate that we'll need to hire 40,000 new childcare workers across Canada in the next 3 years, and this doesn't even take into account waiting lists and potential retirements. And so I know that staffing is mentioned in your organization's brief as well that you submitted to this committee. And so to meet this demand, various streams will have to be used, whether it's post-secondary training or immigration, all of those do take time. So from your expertise, do you see this as feasible within less than 3 years based on the current actions that have been taken so far?
Thanks for that question. Absolutely, I think that there has been really good strides, particularly here in British Columbia, to support the sector to continue on with their education and to meet the demands. Definitely, the demand is huge in this province as well as other provinces and territories. I think that a really strong strategy that needs to be in place to address the education for early childhood educators, and at the same time there's no real shortcuts. That's our organization's biggest concern, is that decision makers will try to fast track what is needed in this sector and this profession.
Great. Thank you very much. Do you have any idea what, being also from British Columbia myself, like yourself, do you have any idea what the wait lists are in British Columbia?
For childcare?
Yes.
It really depends on each community, but it can be for specific age groups, up to 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so that's the wait time. And do you know how many children are on a wait list right now? Do you have any numbers on there? And do you also know if there's a difference between urban and rural for breakdown?
There's definitely a difference depending on what kind of programs and services are offered in particular communities, in rural and urban. Do I have the numbers at my fingertips? Not right this moment, but I can pass that on.
Great. Thank you. If you could please table for this committee what those numbers are, both with the times and also the number of children that are on wait list, whatever details you have. If you could table that for this committee, we would really appreciate it. And I will actually now cede my time over to my colleague, Ms. Ferrari.
Thank you so much. Leila, I really appreciate your advocacy around poverty. And so one of the things that's written in this bill, the way that it's currently written, is that it's saying parents have varying incomes. And so what we're seeing actually people, women in particular, who need access to affordable childcare pushed back to the back of the list. Do you have a current numbers on the wait list of low income or people in the poverty line who are on wait lists for $10 a day daycare?
I do not have that, but I am happy to see if I can find that and submit it to the committee.
I think that would be wonderful, because one of the witnesses that was, hopefully we're going to get back, was supposed to testify last night, has shared this, by no fault of their own. There are many people who've done financially well, and they don't need subsidized childcare. They can afford it, but they have a space and they're taking up a space in these places when you have families who are struggling. They need to go to work. If they don't go to work, they can't pay their bills, and they're pushed to the back of the line for the subsidized spaces. Do you think the bill needs to be strengthened to include or to prioritize those who are on lower incomes?
We do absolutely believe and have made some very specific recommendations for the guiding principles to include, and actually that section that you refer to, we've rewritten it to say ensure that all families of all incomes, including low incomes, benefit from affordable and early learning and childcare. Part of the issue is that these low-income families face barriers to even getting onto the wait list. So these are things that need to be really targeted as we're developing a universal system.
And overall, okay, thank you. Just overall, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferrari. Mr. Van Byn for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been a very interesting learning experience. As a grandfather of 5, most of which are teenagers, this hasn't been a top-of-mind issue for me, so this has been quite refreshing to hear the information. I'm particularly taken by the huge backlog that we're seeing and the need for childcare and how we need to go forward to make sure that we implement this quickly and effectively. My question is for Mr. Smith. As he is on the expert panel for the government, I'd like to get an understanding of what your learnings have been and what your advice would be. I know that the bill provides for a National Advisory Council, and the description of the mandate is fairly broad, not as well defined as I would like to see in a mandate. My concerns are around quality, sustainability, growth and expansion planning for the program in the longer term. What are the provisions that you would like to see in the mandate for the federal government's National Advisory Council to ensure that that fits within their authorities?
Okay, thank you for the question. As a member of the Advisory Council, I'm not able to comment specifically on the work of the Advisory Council. I think it's very important that a National Advisory Council be in place, and so I would, turn to my colleagues and ask for their advice and direction on how they think that might best be expressed in legislation. What I would point to is quite critically is the difference between federal legislation and provincial and territorial areas of jurisdiction. And I think when we look at the agreements that the Government of Canada has negotiated with the provinces and territories, it's absolutely critical that those agreements provide for the provision of expansion of services in the ways that meet community needs, particularly in respects to the questions that are arising around the workforce. And I would anticipate that in that next round of action plans, every one of those action plans should put workforce as the #1 priority. So I apologize, I'm not able to speak on the National Advisory Council.
Okay, thank you. Now, it's evident and the focus needs to be on quality care for children, and that's an essential part. Can you, in your capacity as an expert witness, tell me what the key elements of high-quality child care are? How can that be measured? How can that be monitored? And what role can the federal government play to ensure that those measures are attained or sustained?
Okay, thank you for the question. So the research literature on quality is complex, but if I was trying to summarize it in a way that is, sort of short and brief, the key element of quality is the educational preparation and the working conditions of the early childhood educator who's working with children in the room. When we look at the research, that's what we come back to, is what is the nature of the qualification for that educator and how is she prepared and supported in her important role. So I would anticipate in the bilateral agreements, particular attention would be paid to ensuring that early childhood educators appropriately paid, fairly compensated and educationally prepared for their work. So the essential element of quality is the educator and her interactions with children.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll see the balance of my time. My questions have been answered, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Van Bynen. We'll now go to Madame Beyroubet pour 5 minutes, Madame.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the witnesses present here today before the committee. My question is for Mrs. Galik. We're talking about challenges that are huge for families in isolated and rural regions when we're talking about access to daycare. What do you think that the bill should bring forward? Do you think that the bill should have targeted support for families living in rural and isolated areas?
Thank you for that question. Absolutely, we need to look at the different jurisdictions where childcare is needed and have specific targets and transitions for those communities as well.
And what are the goals to be reached?
From our perspective, the long-term goal is to ensure that all children and families have access to high-quality childcare in the communities that they choose to live and work in.
Merci. Thank you. Mr. Smith, what do you think the bill should bring forth as targeted support for children with disabilities or families with diverse needs?
Thank you for the question. So I think it's critical in the preamble to the bill that there's reference made to support for children with disabilities and the recognition of our obligations under international treaties. And so specifically, I would say in terms of the overarching legislation should speak specifically to the equitable access of all children and families, regardless of where they live, their income, and their level of ability. Then the real action, if you like, in terms of ensuring equitable access takes place within the bilateral agreements and negotiated with the provinces and territories.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres considérations? Are there other considerations with regards to diversity that could be added to C35?
In terms of specifics, I think the overarching guidelines, I think it's clear in section 7.1 A, B, C, D that there should be appropriate reference to diversity. So if wording, a friendly amendment is needed in those sections, absolutely. It's critical that this program be inclusive for all children and families.
We know that in the bill, we don't find a definition of daycare. We don't have the ages of the children for the pan-Canadian system. So in your opinion, is this a problem? Could you speak to us about what this will create as a consequence? For the three witnesses, please.
I'm happy to answer first very briefly. Thank you for the question. So it's my understanding that in terms of framing the legislation, that at the moment, most of the bilateral agreements speak to 0 to 6, but there is the potential, and an important area recognizing that this also might extend to after school care. So I think the legislation is an attempt to be enabling rather than limiting. So.
Madame Sarangi. Mrs. Sarangi.
Thank you for the question. I would add that from a poverty perspective, children below the age of 6 consistently have higher rates of child poverty. Oftentimes it's related to the mother's inability to earn an income, the high cost of infant childcare, the lack of availability, so that it starts with targeting children 0 to 5 is really important. I agree with Mr. Smith that it has to then extend out to older kids and middle year children where we are finding a gap in services who also have significant educational and developmental needs for kids living in poverty. And on the diversity question, I would just add that there's a difference between diversity, inclusion, and equity, and we need to be striving for equity and inclusion. In our submission, we've put very clear amendments to the Section 7 on that.
Merci, Madame Sarangi. Thank you. Mrs. Galik, what is your point of view?
Yes, thank you. I also I concur with my colleagues here today too, and also to just be mindful that other jurisdictions don't put that age limit on from birth to 6. And actually, we look at the early years at a much broader thoughtful process. And I think that's an important as we move forward.
Merci.
Thank you.
Rubé, is it Ms. Gazan for 5 minutes?
Yes, it is.
Oh, you're taking the 5? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I was happy to hear all the witnesses talk about how they were happy to see the inclusion of UNDRIP in the bill. And we know one of the most, and mention of the TRC, and we know that one of the most violent colonial acts in the country was forcibly apprehending children, taking away parental autonomy and shipping off kids to residential school. I'm glad that we're moving forward in a way where people recognize that injustice. We know with the passing of Bill C-15 in the last Parliament, the application of the United Nations Declaration on the rights of Indigenous peoples was affirmed in Canadian law. That includes Article 3 relating to the right to self-determination. We know that central to the right to self-determine is the respect of the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples. Would you support, and this is a yes or no question for all the people on the panel today, in addition to the current article in the bill, in addition to First Nations, Inuit, Métis, children, families are best supported by early learning and childcare programs and services that are culturally appropriate, that are led by Indigenous peoples. And this is the amendment I think is critical if we're going to move forward in reconciliation, and that uphold the right of Indigenous people to free, prior, and informed consent on matters relating to children. Yes or no, Mr. Smith?
I think that's covered in Guiding Principle 7.1. Thank you.
Okay. Madame Gaelic?
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Madame Sarangi?
Absolutely, and I would suggest making that the first top line.
Okay, thank you so much, Madame Sarangi. I actually have another question for you. Do you agree that Bill C-35 should be amended to include an explicit commitment to supporting decent working conditions, livable wages, and benefits for childcare staff as one of the principles guiding the federal investments in the system?
Yes, definitely. There was a question earlier about the need or the gap in staffing at 40,000 and having decent work legislated, offering wages that bring people up above the low income measure, having those decent working conditions of, as we've been discussing, staff, ECE workers, childcare workers will be attracted to those jobs and will be better retained. So yes, definitely.
And just moving on, let's talk about workers. And you did certainly in your presentation, because we hear a lot about the workforce crisis in childcare, but we hear less about who these workers are. We know that they're overwhelmingly women, disproportionately women of color, and many migrant women. Can you expand on some of the challenges facing these workers and how we can better support workers in the sector?
Yes, these are mostly racialized women with precarious work hours who are barely making minimum wage jobs, and that creates a crisis in their families. These are also mothers who need to access and pay for child care. So it is a benefit to have decent work with livable wages, opportunities for professional development, that pedagogical development, and staff who can have that warm that relationship with the children in care.
And Madame Gaelic, thank you so much, Madame Sarangi. We've heard, like I said, a lot in this committee about a worker shortage. And I take issue with this term because I know there are trained childcare workers out there, but we know that many are leaving the profession or not entering it after graduating because of poor wages, benefits, and working conditions. How important is it for us to address these issues in order to solve the workforce crisis?
Well, I believe it's imperative. I think as we move forward to build this system, it's the first thing that needs to be addressed is the workforce issues around wages, benefits, working conditions, and the respect for the work that the predominantly woman workforce is doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, and just moving on.
Ms. Kazan, a very short question.
Okay, sure.
Time
Would
is
you
out.
support adding more clear language to Bill C-35 that one of the guiding principles guiding the federal funding ought to be supporting an early childhood education workforce that has decent working conditions, livable wages, and benefits?
That would be fabulous if we could see that embedded into this.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kazan. Now, as we have to move in camera for the business portion of the meeting, I want to thank the witnesses for taking your time to appear before the HUMA committee this morning on this important piece of legislation. Thank you so much, and we will excuse you while we suspend for a few moments to change over to go in camera. Again, thank you. The committee members will have to log out and log back in, right? Will they have to log out and log back in? Yes, okay. So you're fine. You go. Madame Shabat?
Oui, Monsieur. Mr. Chair, I would like to ask, please, I would like to ask for unanimous consent. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Could you repeat that?
It's the interpreter. Madame Shabat, répétez.
Could you repeat this, please? No. I would like to ask the unanimous consent of my colleagues so that during this in-camera session that my colleague, Sylvie, can state that we be two.
Unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent, only one can vote. We need unanimous consent. Unanimous consent?
So some people were not on the call though, because they already dropped to log on to the call.
I'll repeat it as soon as the other members come back on, but I think it'll be fine, Madame Shabat. I will seek unanimous consent at the start, before we start. As soon as we have, who is it, committee members logging on? Ms. Falk? Madame... Well, and Ms. Kazan is on.
Thank you.